We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DT India NewsNight, India's Voice to the World. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, coming up in the next hour. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi embarks on a two-day visit to Saudi Arabia, visit to further strengthen multifaceted partnership and boost energy and defence ties. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says India and Saudi Arabia are working on a bilateral investment treaty, terms Saudi Arabia as one of India's most valued partners, trusted friend, strategic ally. US Vice President J.D. Vance begins his two-day with visiting Amer Fort in Jaipur with family. India declares three-day state mourning as world mourns the passing away of Pope Francis, a beacon of hope, tributes pour in from across the globe. Russian President Putin says he's open to direct peace talks with Ukraine. Zelensky says Ukraine stands by truce offer on civilian targets. US to hold talks with Europe, Ukraine on Wednesday. And on to the top story this hour. Embarking on a two-day visit to Saudi Arabia, Prime Minister Narendra Modi in his departure statement said that today I embark on a two-day state visit to the Kingdom of Saudi at the invitation of Crown Prince and Prime Minister, His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman. India deeply values its long and historic ties with Saudi Arabia that have acquired strategic depth and momentum in recent years. Together, we have developed a mutually beneficial and substantive partnership, including in the domains of defence, trade, investment, energy and people-to-people ties. We've shared interest and commitment to promote regional peace, prosperity, security and stability. This will be my third visit to Saudi Arabia over the past decade and a first one to the historic city of Jeddah. I look forward to participating in the second meeting of the Strategic Partnership Council and build upon the highly successful state visit of my brother, His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman to India in 2023. I'm also eager to connect with the vibrant Indian community in Saudi Arabia that continues to serve as the living bridge between our nations and making immense contribution to strengthening the cultural and human ties. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has shared a post on X. He wrote, and I quote, "Leaving for Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, where I will be attending various meetings and programs. India values our historic relations with Saudi Arabia. Bilateral ties have gained significant momentum in the last decade. I look forward to participating in the second meeting of the Strategic Partnership Council. I'll also be interacting with the Indian community there," unquote. And in an exclusive interview with Arab News, Prime Minister Narendra Modi described the kingdom as a trusted friend and strategic ally, emphasizing how bilateral relations had expanded significantly since the creation of the Strategic Partnership Council in 2019. Prime Minister Modi praised Saudi Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman's leadership, calling him a strong advocate of India-Saudi Arabia bilateral ties and a visionary who has inspired global admiration through the reforms under Vision 2030. Highlighting shared economic ambitions, Prime Minister Modi noted that trade between the two countries had grown even amid global challenges. India and Saudi Arabia are also working on a bilateral investment treaty. Prime Minister welcomed a deeper integration of Saudi and Indian businesses, particularly in emerging sectors like green hydrogen and technology. India is also exploring joint projects in refineries and petrochemicals. Prime Minister Modi congratulated the kingdom for winning the bids to host World Expo 2030 and FIFA World Cup 2034. He was grateful to the Saudi leadership for the continued assistance provided to Indian nationals who visit Saudi Arabia each year for Umrah and Hajj pilgrimage. Well, the high-profile Saudi Arabia visit underscores the remarkable transformation of relations from modest beginnings to a comprehensive strategic partnership spanning economic, defense and cultural dimensions. Here's more in this report.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's two-day visit to Jeddah comes amid growing economic ties between India and Saudi Arabia. It will be the first visit by an Indian leader to Saudi Arabia's commercial hub in over 4 decades. The high-profile visit underscores the remarkable transformation of India-Saudi relations from modest beginnings to a comprehensive strategic partnership spanning economic, defense and cultural dimensions. In the financial year 2023 to 2024, India's imports from Saudi Arabia amounted to $31.42 billion and exports stood at $11.56 billion. India and Saudi Arabia enjoy close friendly relations, reflecting the centuries-old economic and socio-cultural ties. Diplomatic relations between the two nations were established in the year 1947. The historic visit of King Abdullah to India in January 2006 was a watershed moment that resulted in the signing of the Delhi Declaration. It was followed later by the Riyadh Declaration in 2010, which elevated the bilateral relations to a strategic partnership. PM Modi's visit to Saudi Arabia is expected to result in several new agreements that will further strengthen the strategic partnership between the two nations, building on their shared interests in regional stability, energy security, and economic growth. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit will be a milestone in taking India-Saudi relations to a new height in an era of geopolitics marked by Donald Trump's tariff shock, Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative debt trap conundrum, and the Russia-Ukraine standoff. The visit will also be an opportunity for the Indian and Saudi leadership to exchange views on the situation in Gaza and efforts to end the Israel-Hamas conflict. Trade, connectivity, energy, security, defense, investment, diaspora, culture and cooperation are the focal points of the proposed meeting between PM Modi and Saudi Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman. The proposed India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor, or the IMEC, will attract significant attention of both the leaders. The IMEC underscores the growing economic and strategic convergence between India and the Middle East. It is seen as an opportunity for Indian and Saudi businesses to collaborate and benefit. For India and the Middle East, the IMEC signifies a deepening relationship with the convergence of the Middle East and South Asia into West Asia. For both sides, it can be instrumental in stimulating economic growth, creating jobs, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. From Saudi Arabia and the UAE, it represents a diversification of partnerships between their roles as energy producers. India's trade ties with Saudi Arabia and the UAE are already substantial, and this corridor could further strengthen their economic integration. If the IMEC corridor materializes soon, it will give a huge boost to the kingdom's other entrepreneurship-driven ventures as well as the Neom City project, which will provide an alternate route to the troublesome Houthi-influenced Red Sea-Suez corridor. Indian investment in Saudi Arabia has increased significantly in recent years. These investments span diverse sectors including management and consultancy services, construction projects, telecommunications, information technology, financial services, software development, and pharmaceuticals. The Indian community in Saudi Arabia numbers at approximately 2.7 million and is a living bridge between the two countries. Bureau Report, DD, India.
While marking a significant milestone as the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Saudi Arabia's key commercial centre in over 4 decades, this visit is geared towards enhancing the strategic partnership between India and Saudi Arabia. DD India's Amritpal Singh reports from Jeddah.
Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia Mohammed bin Salman shall be receiving Prime Minister Modi when he arrives in Jeddah today. The Prime Minister shall be here for the next 2 days. The Crown Prince and the Prime Minister shall be co-chairing the second meeting of the Strategic Partnership Council, where trade and investment, energy security, defense cooperation and regional security issues will be high on the agenda of the talks.
Host of issues will be discussed on the economic partnership, on the defense partnership, on the political relationship. So we are expecting a very fruitful visit, very good discussions and very important outcomes.
On Wednesday, the Prime Minister shall be interacting with Indian workers at a factory here in Jeddah. There are about 2.7 billion Indian diaspora living and working in Saudi Arabia. Given that Saudi Arabia is a leading voice in the Islamic region, the situation in West Asia is likely to figure in the talks. Also, Saudi Arabia is playing an important role in the mediation between Russia and Ukraine. The two sides could exchange notes on that. Also, the fact that Saudi Arabia is an important partner of India in meeting its energy security needs, this would be high on the agenda. And out of the several MOUs that are expected to be signed, an important or a significant MOU in the energy sector could be signed between the two sides during this visit. With cameraman Saurav Bakshi, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India in Jeddah.
And now we have my colleague Amritpal Singh sharing his nights with us. Well, Amrit, we saw your report. You said that Saudi Arabia is a key partner of India when it comes to meeting its energy security needs. So tell us why Saudi Arabia is important and why energy could figure high in the talks between the two sides.
That's right. Energy security is a key component of the bilateral relationship, given the fact that, Saudi Arabia is the third largest supplier of both crude oil and LPG to India. India sources its energy needs from Saudi Arabia, about 14.3% of the crude oil imports and about 18% of the LPG from Saudi Arabia. Given that Saudi Arabia is a key producer of crude oil and LPG, India requires Saudi Arabia, and that is the bedrock. That's the bedrock of the relationship between the two sides. And this time around, we could see the signing of a very significant energy pact between the two sides after the two leaders meet.
All right. Amrit, there is also a robust defense cooperation between the two sides. Could we see a forward movement on that?
Yes, that is likely to figure very prominently in the talks between the two leaders, given the fact that India has bagged a contract of about $225 billion for production of munitions in India for Saudi Arabia. The two sides would touch upon that and how that can be upscaled, given the fact that the focus of this government is Make in India, especially in the defense sector. So India would want to boost its exports, while Saudi Arabia is trying to diversify the basket of its imports when it comes to defense stores. And also, the joint exercises between the two sides, both the cooperation between the navies of the two countries and the armies which have held joint exercises. The Indian Navy plays a crucial role in securing the Gulf of Aden, especially anti-piracy operations, protecting commercial liners. So this cooperation could figure in the talks, and in fact the two sides would try and look at how to strengthen this relationship between the two security forces and provide security to the region. That also assumes increased significance because of the constant attacks by the Houthi rebels from Yemen, which, if you look at the map, sits right on the south of Saudi Arabia, which is a cause of concern for the West Asia. And there the India-Saudi Arabia cooperation could be vital in providing security to this region.
All right, Amrit, thank you so much for all those insights. And moving on, yoga is fast gaining in popularity in Saudi Arabia and is now officially recognized as a sporting activity. Noof Marwai, a Saudi yoga expert who has been instrumental in promoting yoga in the region, told DD India that yoga has not only grown in popularity in the Arab world, but has become a cultural bridge between the two countries. Amritpal Singh reports for more.
Yoga gets popularized around the world, especially after the UN marked the International Day of Yoga, and the efforts of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to popularize this Indian form it has gained traction here in Saudi Arabia. I'm with Nauf Marwai. She's a certified yoga instructor. She's a Saudi national. And very interestingly, she's also a Padma Shri awardee. She shall be meeting the Prime Minister on the 23rd when the Prime Minister is here in Jeddah. Thank you for speaking to us, Nauf. Give us a sense of how popular is, what is the kind of popularity that yoga sees in Saudi Arabia?
Yoga is popular in Saudi Arabia since 20 years. Actually, the popularity is growing more and more. And the Ministry of Sports, of course, established the Saudi Yoga Committee in 2021 that to popularize and promote yoga in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And now this movement also went out and reached to other countries as well. So other countries started giving yoga institutional support by also creating
Other countries as in other countries of West Asia or Middle East?
Arab countries, Arab Asian and African Arab countries. I'm talking about UAE, Bahrain, Egypt, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Palestine, all these countries established.
When we talk about countries, do you think it helps strengthen cultural relations between the Arab world and India?
Of course, because yoga is an Indian heritage and it's also registered in the UNESCO as intangible heritage since 2015. And that actually creates a bridge of cultural exchange between India and the Arab countries as well.
So clearly yoga has emerged as a unifier, in a sense, a cultural unifier, something which connects the Arab people with the Indian people. Though the Prime Minister shall be holding official talks and covering various aspects of the bilateral relation ranging from security to defense to trade ties, but it's the cultural aspect which connects the people of both countries. With cameraman Saurabh Bakshi, this is Amrit Pal Singh for DD India in Jeddah.
And time now for a short break. We'll be back in a while. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and moving on, the US Vice President J.D. Vance began his day 2 with visiting Jaipur with his wife Usha Vance and 3 children. He will be in Jaipur till 24th of April, and during this time he will visit many historical sites including Amer Fort and Jaipur City Palace. On his arrival at the Amer Palace, he was accorded a traditional Rajasthani welcome with elephants. The female elephants named Pushpa and Chanda led the reception. Foolproof security arrangements are in place for the visit of the US Vice President. Vance will address a business summit organized at the Rajasthan International Center on April 22nd, where he will share his views on India-US trade relations. Also, on the 23rd of April, J.D. Vance and family will go to Agra and visit the Taj Mahal. After this, he will return to Jaipur and visit the City Palace. On April 24th, he will leave for Washington, D.C. from Jaipur itself. Moving on, early on Monday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi welcomed US Vice President J.D. Vance at his official residence in New Delhi. Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with US Vice President J.D. Vance, accompanied by the Second Lady Usha Vance, their children and senior members of the US administration. Prime Minister fondly recalled his visit to Washington, D.C. in January and his fruitful discussions with President Trump, which laid down the roadmap for close cooperation between India and the US, leveraging the strengths of Make America Great Again and Viksit Bharat 2047. Prime Minister and Vice President Vance reviewed and positively assessed the progress in various areas of bilateral cooperation. They welcomed the significant progress in the negotiations for a mutually beneficial India-US bilateral trade agreement focused on the welfare of the people of the two countries. Likewise, they noted continued efforts towards enhancing cooperation in energy, defense, strategic technologies and other areas. The two leaders also exchanged views on various regional and global issues of mutual interest and called for dialogue on diplomacy as the way forward. Prime Minister extended his best wishes to the Vice President, Second Lady and their children for a pleasant and productive stay in India. Prime Minister conveyed his warm greetings to President Trump and said that he looked forward to his visit to India later this year. On Monday, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife Usha, along with their children, visited Swaminarayan Akshardham Temple in New Delhi, their first stop in India, experiencing its majestic art, architecture and timeless values of faith, family and harmony. And Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is visiting US to participate in multilateral dialogues in various fora to showcase India's economic dynamism. On the second day of her visit today, she met General Partner of Andreessen Horowitz Anjane Midha and CEO of VMware Raghu Raghuram in San Francisco today. The Union Finance Minister discussed the remarkable transformation in technology space driven by the visionary leadership of the Prime Minister. Referring to Digital India program, she suggested to both a 16Z and VMware to explore collaboration across sectors within the domain of AI, including in education, healthcare and AI centers of excellence. Sitharaman also met CEO of Google Cloud Thomas Kurian and his team too. The CEO acknowledged and appreciated India's AI mission and the trajectory India is taking under the leadership of the Prime Minister and called for connecting India to the world via land and sea cables. Thomas Kurian said that Google Cloud aims to operate entirely on carbon-free energy or CFE 24/7 at its data centers and offices worldwide by 2030 and spoke about upcoming investment strategy that the group is working on for India. The Finance Minister also met a data robot CEO Debanjan Saha, underlining the steps taken by India over years to boost digital infrastructure, including budgeting of rupees 10,300 crore for India AI mission, creating AI language technologies through Bharat Gen and Sarvam One, among others. While Debanjan Saha expressed interest in participating in the AI Center of Excellence, for which the Union Budget 2025-26 recently allocated 500 crore rupees. Sitharaman also met Jonathan Siddharth, the founder and CEO of Turing in San Francisco. The CEO expressed his desire to see India at the forefront of AI revolution and spoke about working in the domain of AI with India and through Indian contributors to create a sovereign model that can serve as a template for the world. Sitharaman encouraged Jonathan to explore opportunities for collaboration and fruitful engagement. Later, the Finance Minister Sitharaman attended a luncheon roundtable with various pension fund managers and other institutional investors. The roundtable was hosted by Consulate General of India in San Francisco, where the participants shared their views on the reforms pursued by India and gave feedback and observation on the existing policy framework. They spoke about the keen interest and commitment for a deeper and broad-based investment collaboration between USA and India and shared feedback on how to further facilitate and enhance the investment experience. While Sitharaman spoke about the opportunity for investment and collaboration in the domain of energy and sustainability. And at Hoover Institution, the Finance Minister also participated in a fireside chat with Professor Stephen J. Davis, where she highlighted digital public infrastructure and its success. She said that over 1 billion digital identities have been created using DPI, using which bank accounts of people were created, and during COVID-19 pandemic, money was transferred by the government in a click of a button. DPI also came useful in administering vaccine during COVID-19 pandemic. She stressed that G20 members, the World Bank and the IMF have repeatedly lauded this singular population scale achievement of India. And the Joint Parliamentary Committee on One Nation, One Election is meeting today. Suggestions will be collected and parliamentarians will review them. The last meeting of the JPC on March 25th and lasted for 5 hours. During this meeting, PP Chaudhary reiterated that One Nation, One Election was in the best interest of the nation. Still to come on DD India News Hour. Who will be Pope Francis's successor? We will try to understand the process of electing a new pope. Harvard sues Trump administration over U.S. federal funding cuts. And South Sudan's military recaptures key town in Upper Nile state from rebels.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Lipakshi Kuran and time now for a quick recap of the headlines. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi embarks on a 2-day visit to Saudi Arabia, visit to further strengthen multifaceted partnership and boost energy and defence ties. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says India and Saudi Arabia are working on a bilateral investment treaty, termed Saudi Arabia as one of India's most valued partners, trusted friend, strategic ally. US Vice President J.D. Vance begins his day 2 with visiting Amer Fort in Jaipur with family. India declares 3-day state mourning as world mourns the passing away of Pope Francis, a beacon of hope, tributes pour in from across the globe. Russian President Putin says he's open to direct peace talks with Ukraine. Zelensky says Ukraine stands by truce offer on civilian targets. US to hold talks with Europe, Ukraine on Wednesday in UK. And moving on, Russian President Vladimir Putin proposed bilateral talks with Ukraine for the first time since the early days of the conflict, and his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky said Kyiv was eager to discuss a halt to attacks on civilian targets. Russia and Ukraine have said they are open to further ceasefires after 30 hours Easter truce declared by Moscow at the weekend. Each side accused the other of violating it. Putin said fighting had resumed after the Easter ceasefire, which he announced unilaterally on Saturday. And Moscow was open to any peace initiatives and expected the same from Kyiv.
Kyiv regime is trying to seize the initiative and talk about expanding the time frame and the targets. But we must think about it and carefully assess everything and look at the results. If you paid attention, I said from the very beginning, when I met with the Chief of the General Staff, that we would see what the experience of the Easter truce would be like. Overall, still, there has been a reduction in activity. We welcome that and we are ready to look at the future.
While Zelensky did not respond directly to Putin's proposal, he emphasized that Ukraine was ready for any conversation about a ceasefire that would stop strikes on the civilians. Zelensky said Ukraine will take part in talks with the US and European countries on Wednesday in London.
Today was almost entirely dedicated to working with partners in various formats. We are preparing meetings for Wednesday with partners from Europe, the UK, France, Germany and from the United States. These meetings can bring us closer to a ceasefire and a real lasting peace.
And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of carrying out nearly 3,000 violations of the Easter truce his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin had announced. Zelensky said that Ukraine stood by its proposal for an end to attacks on civilian targets and was ready for any form of discussion to achieve it. Zelensky also said that Kyiv was sending a delegation to talks in London on Wednesday with Western countries on finding a resolution to the conflict with Ukraine.
Today was almost entirely dedicated to working with partners in various formats. We are preparing meetings for Wednesday with partners from Europe, the UK, France, Germany and from the United States. These meetings can bring us closer to a ceasefire and a real lasting peace.
And for more, we have Akshay Dongre joining us on this. Well, Akshay, this is the first time President Putin has publicly proposed bilateral talks since the early days of the war. How do we perceive this shift, especially when both the sides have been blaming each other for the truce violations?
Well, yes, there have been allegations by both Russia and Ukraine that the other side has violated the ceasefire of Easter that was announced in advance. However, it's a good sign that both the leaders are now coming out, though not talking to each other directly or responding to each other's statement that they are issuing, but both are now talking about a ceasefire or a peace plan so that war can stop, the conflict can stop, attacks against the civilian infrastructure can be halted as well. And the reason for that also seems conspicuously because a few days back itself, the US government had clarified that Ukraine's NATO membership is now off the table. However, initially when that statement was issued, there were certain skeptics that were questioning the reliability or credibility of a statement like that coming in from the US government, especially at a time when their stance keeps on changing. However, also questions were whether the European partners of Ukraine will be backing its NATO membership despite the US calling the deal off the table. However, what it seems at this point in time is that the Russian leadership is now moving towards calling for a ceasefire as well, which is happening after about 3 years of war, bloodshed, a lot of civilian losses, lives of civilians have been lost, lives of a lot of soldiers have been lost, families destroyed, infrastructure damaged beyond repair at this point, not only in Ukraine but in Russia as well. So clearly a ceasefire is in not only in favor of both the countries but also the economy of Europe and the global economy as a whole, given the fact that already with the tariffs that are being implemented by the US government and other kind of restrictions that are taking place, conflicts that are happening around the world have already put a lot of stress on the global financial system, and perhaps a peace ceasefire, a peace plan between the two countries can be a good news for the world itself. And also what we are following consistently is that the US has been calling for ceasefire and also business deals for both the countries, both Ukraine and Russia. We all know that when Donald Trump came into office, he talked about the rare earth minerals that can be taken from Ukraine or mined from Ukraine, not only for the Ukrainian government but also for the US in exchange for the kind of support that it has been providing the country, the kind of funding that has went in from the West and especially the US to the country in fighting this war. And now that the government of the United States has already pulled back in a major way from providing direct assistance to Ukraine, its position had weakened. It has been calling for ceasefires, and perhaps now what we are seeing directly is a result of the kind of pressures that have been built from across the world for both of these countries to stop the war. So there is now beacon of hope, light at the end of the tunnel perhaps, but we are looking at both the leaders now directly talking about peace and a ceasefire, which can move into a good direction if the consistency of these efforts remain the same. Back to you.
All right, Akshay. Also, will both sides now signaling openness to the ceasefire discussions in Ukraine, of course, heading into key talks with Western allies in London tomorrow? What are the chances of meaningful progress?
Well, at this point, there is high hope that there will be a meaningful progress with both Putin and Zelensky talking about peace, because quite honestly, Russia has already invaded certain parts of Donbass, Donetsk. The objectives that Russia had are almost fulfilled. NATO membership is off the table for Ukraine. Certain Russian-speaking areas that wanted to integrate back with Russia in Ukraine have already been annexed by the Russian army. Crimea is already with Russia now. The only thing that keeps on this war from continuing the US support. If it halts, then the war halts. If the support from the Western allies continue, then Ukraine certainly will make an effort to win back the territories that it has lost since the war escalated in 2022. Because if you look at the war, it's not just 3 years of war. Ever since Crimea was annexed by Russia, in a sense, the Russo-Ukrainian war has started, and it has been over a decade of hostilities between the two countries. Perhaps it's time now for some sort of sense and stability in that part of the region.
All right. Thank you so much, Akshay, for all that information. And moving on, Harvard has sued US President Donald Trump's administration to halt the government's pause of more than $2 billion in funding in a sharp escalation of the fight between the university and the Republican. Trump has sought to bring several prestigious universities to heel over claims they tolerated campus anti-Semitism, threatening their budgets, tax-exempt status and the enrollment of foreign students, but Harvard has refused to bow. Among the United States government agencies mentioned in Harvard's lawsuit were the Education Department, the Health Department, the Justice Department, the Energy Department and the General Services Administration. The lawsuit calls for the freezing of funds and conditions imposed on federal grants to be declared unlawful, as well as for the Trump administration to pay Harvard's cost. The administration claims protest against Israel's conflict in Gaza that swept across U.S. college campuses last year were rife with anti-Semitism. And 4 Democratic U.S. representatives arrived in El Salvador on Monday, aiming to press the Trump administration to release Kilmer Abgrego Garcia, a Salvadoran man mistakenly deported and now held in a notorious prison in El Salvador. Representatives Maxwell Frost, Robert Garcia, Yasemin Ansari and Maxine Dexter are in El Salvador to help facilitate Garcia's return to the United States. In social media videos, Ansari and Dexter emphasized the importance of the U.S. government adhering to the Supreme Court's ruling and releasing Garcia. The White House criticized the visit, accusing the 4 Democrats of prioritizing the deported MS-13 gang member over the Americans they represent. And the United States on Monday announced its intention to impose tariffs of up to 3,521% on solar panels from Southeast Asia. This move is aimed at countering alleged Chinese subsidies and dumping in the sector. The tariffs on companies from Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia and Vietnam will still need to be ratified at a meeting of the International Trade Commission in June. The decision unveiled on Monday comes after anti-dumping and countervailing duty investigations filed around a year ago by several U.S. and other solar manufacturers. Those companies took aim at unfair practices that were said to have weighed on the U.S. domestic solar market, particularly raising concern over Chinese headquartered companies operating out of the Southeast Asian countries. And South Sudan's military announced it has retaken the strategic town of Nasir in Upper Nile State from the ethnic Nuer White Army militia, escalating tensions amid an already fragile political climate. The recapture follows clashes in March that triggered the arrest of first Vice President Riek Machar and reignited fears of violence. Machar stays under house arrest for trying to stir up a rebellion through his supposed support for the White Army militia in Upper Nile has ignited international fears of renewed conflict along ethnic lines. And Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, passed away aged 88, making his final appearance on Easter Sunday before his death. Francis led the Catholic Church for over a decade, becoming the first Jesuit in Latin America to hold the papacy. The Vatican said in a statement that he died of stroke and subsequent irreversible heart failure. He was recently discharged from the hospital after weeks of treatment for an infection. Prime Minister Narendra Modi called him a beacon of compassion and recalled Pope's affection for the people of India. As a mark of respect to Pope Francis, 3-day state mourning will be observed throughout India. 2-day state mourning begins today, while 1-day state mourning on the day of the funeral. During the period of the state mourning, the national flag will be flown at half-mast throughout India on all buildings where the national flag is flown regularly, and there will be no official entertainment. And as the world mourns the passing away of Pope Francis, the Roman Catholic Church will begin elaborate rituals steeped in tradition that mark the end of one papacy and lead to the start of the next. So let's understand how a new Pope is elected.
Catholic Church. The next Pope will be the 267th leader of the 2,000-year-old Catholic Church and become sovereign of the Vatican City-State. When a Pope dies or resigns, the College of Cardinals, comprising bishops and Vatican officials from around the world, takes over the governance of the Catholic Church. The bishops and cardinals hold a series of meetings called General Congregations to discuss the state of the Church and prepare for the upcoming election. They also make arrangements for the funeral and burial of the deceased Pope. The cardinal electors, 120 in number, limited to cardinals below the age of 80, pray and meditate in the magnificent Sistine Chapel, the walls and ceilings of which have been painted by Michelangelo and is regarded as one of the most priceless artworks in existence. There, they take an oath of secrecy and lock themselves in for the duration of the conclave. There are 4 Indian cardinals eligible to participate in the conclave. They are Cardinal Basilios Klimas Isaac Totunkal, Major Archbishop of Tiruvananthapuram, of the Syro-Malankara Rite, which is in communion with the Catholic Church. Cardinal Anthony Pula, Archbishop of Hyderabad. Cardinal Felipe Neri Antonio Sebastio de Rosario Farao, Archbishop of Goa. Cardinal George Jacob Kuvakard, who is in charge of inter-religious dialogue in the Vatican. Of the 120 cardinals, over 63% have been appointed by Pope Francis and are likely to continue with his reformist agenda in the Church. The others form part of a conservative movement that is protecting the centuries-old deposit of the Catholic faith. The cardinals vote by secret ballot. Eligo un summum pontificem. I elect the Most High Pontiff. They fold their ballots twice and drop them into a chalice. 4 rounds of balloting are held each day until a candidate receives a 2/3 majority. Once a candidate is elected, the ballots are burnt with chemicals that produce white smoke, signaling to the world that a new pope has been chosen. If no candidate is elected, the ballots are burned with chemicals that produce black smoke. Once a candidate is elected, he chooses a papal name and emerges onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to bless the 1.5 billion Catholics. This ancient process is part of the enduring traditions of the Catholic Church. Bureau Report, DD India.
And still to come in DD India News Hour. Google settles Android Smart TV antitrust case with India's CCI. In tennis, unseeded Ostapenko shocks world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka in the Stuttgart Open final. An International Mother Earth Day today, highlighting our shared role in protecting the environment.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. On to some business news now. U.S. stocks plunged on Monday as President Donald Trump escalated his attacks on the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, sparking concerns over the central bank's independence. The move contributed to steep losses across all major indexes, especially the tech-heavy NASDAQ. Trump's criticism of Powell on Truth Social raised alarms, with the president calling for immediate interest rate cuts. Experts warn that political interference with the Fed could harm economic stability. Meanwhile, escalating U.S.-China trade tensions added further uncertainty, fueling worries among the investors. The S&P 500, NASDAQ and Dow Jones all posted significant losses. As earnings season heats up, investors are keeping a close eye on reports from major firms, including Tesla and Alphabet. And the dollar languished near its lowest level in 3 years on Tuesday as President Donald Trump's unrelenting attacks on the Federal Reserve Chairman further eroded investor confidence in the U.S. economy. The U.S. currency sagged close to the decade low reached the previous day against the Swiss franc and hovered near a 3.5-year trough versus the euro. Trump ramped up his criticism of Fed Chair Jerome Powell on Monday in a Truth Social post, calling him a major loser and demanding that he lower interest rates now or risk an economic slowdown. Well, the global markets trembled and gold surged to an all-time high on Tuesday as fresh attacks by former U.S. President Donald Trump against Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell raised fears over the central bank's independence and triggered a wave of investor panic. Amid ongoing economic uncertainty tied to U.S. tariffs and inflation concerns, Trump's escalating rhetoric against Powell has intensified anxieties in financial markets. Following Powell's recent warning that administration's aggressive tariff policies could reignite inflation. And Alphabet's Google needs strong measures imposed on it to prevent it from using its artificial intelligence products to extend its dominance in online search, a U.S. Department of Justice attorney said as a trial in the historic antitrust case began on Monday. The outcome of the case could fundamentally reshape the internet by unseating Google as the go-to portal for information online. The Justice Department is seeking an order that will require Google to sell its Chrome browser and take other measures to end what a judge found was its monopoly in online search. The DOJ and a broad coalition of state attorneys general are pressing for remedies they believe will restore competition even as search evolves to overlap with generative AI products such as ChatGPT. Well, you're watching DT India News. Our time now for some sports news. Gujarat Titans defeated Kolkata Knight Riders by 39 runs in the Indian Premier League match on Monday night to consolidate their position at the top of points table. Gujarat captain Shubman Gill smashed 90 runs off just 55 balls to help Gujarat Titans post a handsome total of 198 for 3 in 20 overs. Meanwhile, apart from Kolkata captain Ajinkya Rahane, the batting unit failed to fire for the reigning champions. Every single Gujarat Titans bowler took at least one wicket as they extended their lead at the top of points table. Kolkata, on the other hand, are now 4 points adrift of the playoff spots and sit at the 7th position on points table. Kolkata have suffered back-to-back defeats for the first time this season and are now under pressure to return to winning ways with the second half of the season currently underway. Meanwhile, Rishabh Pant-led Lucknow Super Giants will face Akshar Patel's Delhi Capital in the 40th match of the Indian Premier League on Tuesday evening. Delhi are placed at the second place on the points table with 5 wins in 7 games, whereas Lucknow are at 5th position with 10 points in 8 games. For Lucknow, the poor form of their captain Rishabh Pant is a big worry. He has merely 106 runs from 8 games and 63 of those came in a single match. Delhi might consider bringing in Sri Lankan pacer Dushmantha Chamira due to his familiarity with Lucknow set up and his good head-to-head record against Nicholas Pooran. Lucknow, on the other hand, could hope to see a fully fit Mayank Yadav in the playing 11. And Rajasthan Royals confirmed on Monday that their captain Sanju Samson has been ruled out of Thursday's IPL match against Royal Challengers Bangalore due to injury. Samson experienced a bit of pain in the abdominal area during the game against Delhi Capitals and underwent scans. He also missed Rajasthan's home match against Lucknow Super Giants. Riyan Parag will lead the Royals in his absence for Rajasthan's first 3 matches of this season. Samson was not allowed to keep wickets as he had fractured his right index finger, which required surgery. This led the franchise to appoint Riyan as stand-in skipper. So far in the ongoing season, the Sanju Samson has scored 224 runs in 7 matches, averaging 37.33 and striking at over 140. And unseeded Jelena Ostapenko crushed world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka on Monday to win the clay court title in Stuttgart for her first single trophy of the year. Sabalenka was no match for her opponent's fierce baseline power while also struggling with the first serve. In her first clay court tournament since last year's French Open, Sabalenka was broken in the very first game. Meanwhile, world number 24 Ostapenko also ousted world number 2 Iga Swiatek in the quarterfinals. In the second set, the pair traded early breaks, but the Latvian powered through, winning 16 of 18 points to break Sabalenka twice and race to a 5-1 lead. And today is International Mother Earth Day. This year's theme is Our Power, Our Planet, highlights our shared role in protecting the environment. India leads with Mission Life, launched by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, encouraging sustainable living for all. DD India's Tapas Bhattacharya reports for more.
April 22nd marks International Mother Earth Day. A global reminder that the Earth is not just our home, it's our shared responsibility. Declared by the United Nations in 2009, this day calls on humanity to protect the planet's delicate ecosystem and to act against climate change, biodiversity loss, and environmental degradation. This year's theme, Our Power, Our Planet, urges us to embrace renewable energy, rethink our choices, and work together for a sustainable future.
We have this fantastic scheme that has been launched by the Prime Minister, which is the PM Surya Ghar Yojana. And this effectively is an impetus for all of us to try and use our rooftops more effectively, to control the heat load that first of all comes onto the rooftops, but more importantly, convert each one of the houses in urban India and rural India to a potential generator of electricity and supplement what the grid actually is able to deliver.
India is already leading the way. Through Mission Life, Prime Minister Narendra Modi champions a lifestyle that is conscious, mindful, and environmental friendly. It's a movement that shifts climate action from policy to practice, from governments to every individual. Every action, no matter how small, adds up. This Earth Day, let's answer the call, join the movement, adopt sustainable habits, because when we change, the world changes. Our power, our planet, and our responsibility. With camera person Monty, this is Tapas Bhattacharya for DD India from Delhi.
All right, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Kurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.